Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Lincoln, and today we're going to sculpt this example here. And you'll notice this has chainmail. I've had a few questions about this and sweaters both. And with this, as long as you have the right seamless texture, this is something you can do very easy now in Nomad Sculpt. We're going to be using UV maps and face groups to make this happen. And you'll notice as this is turning that it has one sleeve on the left side. The left cuff is nice and even, and the right cuff is not, and I show you why and how to fix this in this video, because you may have issues with this if you don't lay out your face groups properly. Now, the next thing is we're going to show you how to use Triplanar in the paint tool. Now, this is a very cool trick to use with this because it allows you to put the texture that you're applying all over your model at once with one click, and you're done. All you have to do is pick how much strength you want for your texture. I'm also going to show you another tip with the painting tool and how to paint just the texture and not as much into the underlying material. And the last thing is I'm going to show you another model where I have the texture and some of the issues you might have on the female form. Alright, without anything else, let's get into the video and have fun doing this. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is go through this whole thing and mask the entire thing. So we're going to mask it all. Try that again with an unmask off. There we go. Whole thing's masked. Now we'll just unmask the wrists and the neck, bottom of the torso. And this doesn't need to be perfect. This is just for an example. So looks pretty good. We'll change that neckline up in just a second. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and mask that back in a little bit. Make sure I'm on front filter, front facing, yes. Okay. And we're just going to clean this up a little. And this, once again, this doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. This is for an example. Okay, good enough. So we're just doing a shirt, and I just want to do this as a demonstration. So this will be perfect. Okay, so now what we're going to do is extract this. Now, we're going to do something a little different, and normally you'll see that this is on shell. Down here, when we're in mask, you can be in mask or select mask, either one, it doesn't matter. Come up to the shield, and you have all your things in here. You can change your thickness. I'll leave it, fairly thin. Doesn't need to be that thick for the chainmail we're going to do. And instead of shell, because I would just do the outside skin on that's what we did in the last video. This one, I want the full part. And now this is because if you want to print this and keep all the pieces together, this will make it much easier for you, because then when you go to print, you don't necessarily have to voxel merge it all, but you can join it all and it'll still work the same. So instead of shell, we're going to go to fill right here on the extract area. Extract. Turn this off. We'll go to gizmo and we'll solo the extraction, and you can see that we have a nice extract shell now. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just smooth these edges up real quick. I'll only take a second. Bring that down, bring this all the way up. And you can see that they're not really smoothing out good. And if you look at the wire, it's all goofy. So what we're going to do is come up and do a quick voxel. Just remesh it. Now we can smooth it. And this may not smooth out too much, but I want a little bit smoother than what it is. And once again, like I said, this still doesn't matter too much yet. We still got a few steps to do. Okay. All right, all done. Now, this is the interesting part. We're going to go into face groups, and we're going to divide this all up into pieces, because if we try to UV unwrap this now, first off, you'll see that we're at 143K right here. In this area right here. That's too high. It needs to be under 100K. So we can bring this down. It won't take much to remesh it and bring it down. Just keep bumping it down. Remember, this isn't your actual model. This is just an extraction you're going to turn into something else. So we're just under 100K. It'll still be a little slower, but that's okay. So before we can unwrap this, we need to assign face groups to this. So that's what we'll do now. We'll come up to face groups. All right, now you see that we only have one face group. So I'm going to show you a couple things in face groups now, which are really interesting. First thing, we're going to go on a dot, and if you were to go on here, you see nothing's happening. It doesn't look like. Reason being is because we need to click up here where it says face group, add, and now every time you touch it, it gives you a different face group. So you can click this on and off as you need to. So what we're going to do is, first thing is do each arm and split the torso just like you would a regular shirt would be. And we need to go into here in the settings, make sure we're not that this is unchecked, so we can grab the whole thing. We'll grab lasso. This will just make it a lot easier. We're on add face group, so every time we lasso, we'll get a different face group. And we're just doing this to get a quick rough. Now, something to keep in mind, if we're going to do this because we can get this under 100K and it doesn't matter on the texture. If this is something you needed more texture, you needed more detail, you can always cut this into pieces and do face groups individually on this, but this one we're going to keep it a little bit simpler. Okay, so we can fix that in a second. That looks pretty good. So on here, just long press on a color you want. I'm going to select dot, and now I can just clean up all of my lines a little bit. I'm going to bring the size down a little bit. That's a little extreme. Let's fix this the other way a little bit. All right, and then this one, let's go up on the shoulder a little bit higher. So there's a lot of tricks with the new face group. It's really come a long way, even from my last video. There's so many more things you can do with face groups now. All right, so that looks good, pretty good there. All right, we're gonna do now to get the arms to seam properly. So you're gonna wrap around, but you always have a seam. So UV maps are going to be the same way. So what we're going to do is come in and run another UV map right here on the seam line. That's how you can get a good, we'll do one half, what we should do is do one half of this the right way and one half the wrong way, and you'll see what happens and why it's different. So let's come over here, and I will do a face group on this one. So we got click on a new face group. And we're going to start, and that's way too big. So we're going to just drop it all the way down. Just do a face group right up the back. Okay, I like that. And we're going to click off the new face group so I can tie in here. Now, I'm going to show you on this one, if you do this and you still don't do it right, you'll have something weird going on. So let's go in and I'll show you what this looks like when we map it now, but we need to do one other thing, and I'm going to add a new face group. This is just going to make it easier when we go to masks down the line. I'll show you guys how to mask this. So I've got one here. I'm going to click off the new face group so it'll continue painting the same color and the same face group. Because I don't want to put chainmail in here. I mean, you can, it's not really going to matter. But if we do this properly, we'll see how this works. And you can see I've got right here, I have this tied together. And I want that tied together for a reason. And then we're going to come down here. And the reason I'm doing this is you want to have a different face group for these sections on the side, because if you don't, makes it a lot harder for the UV unwrap, and what it'll end up doing is making these big portions, and you'll see the difference on the right arm compared to the left arm. where the seam is. Now we're going to do one other thing. I need to go into masking, select mask, and we're going to do up here at the top, you're going to go from the face group to shield, and I can just go around and tap different ones. That will tap all of those, which really doesn't matter too much. Tap this guy, and we'll tap this one. That's everything masked that I want. We're going to go back into face group, and we're going to split this body just like it was a seam as well. So we're going to lasso, new face group, and just sort of just come through the body. Now go to Gizmo, go to Inspector, go to, for a long press and hold, we'll go to face groups now. You can see here, or we can just go into face groups either way. And that looks like a good split, and that's a good split on the sides, good enough. And if I wanted to, you could bring this line over a little bit right here, but that's okay. We'll leave it just like that, that's fine. All right, so we can go back to mask and delete. Okay, now we're ready to UV mask. We're going to come in here to miscellaneous, come up to unwrap. Now the Atlas, this one, if we unwrap with this one, it's going to look really weird, I'm sure. We'll take a look and see what it unwraps, and it may be okay, we'll see. Let's go to Inspector, long press and hold, go back to UVs. All right, so what I want you to see is the difference in, we have the chest, we have the back, that all looks good. And then over here, we have this, the left arm looks good. You can see right here, all of the squares look uniform, and the circles do. But if we look at this one, you can see it's stretched and wonky, especially around the wrist, okay? And you have a seam, and it's still, that's the thing with the UV map, it has to put a seam somewhere. And if you don't put one in for it, like we did on this other arm, then it's going to put it wherever it wants to put a seam. So this is going to look really weird when we put texture on, because you're going to have this weird funky seam on top of the arm, which is not normal. That wouldn't be the way you would do it. So we're going to go back into our face groups, and we can fix that really quickly. And I'm still going to show you one other mistake that can happen very easily. And it doesn't sit, whoops, oh, that's good. I'll turn that off so I can continue with it. Now, what I'm going to do is not, you can see right here that I didn't connect the face group. It should be connected right here. But instead, I'm going to leave it off, and you're going to see what usually happens. So let's go back over here. Let's go into Gizmo again and unwrap. And then we'll go back into Inspector after this is done. And you'll see what happens. This is so you'll know usually what happens is, this is weird. Okay, so with this, we should probably, because it's still trying to give you an island up there. So let's go back to the BFF unwrap, which is the one I usually prefer for this. Now, take a look at the wrist areas. This wrist area is nice and clean, okay? And this wrist area has a weird, funky thing going on because it's trying to wrap through that little area right there. So all we have to do to fix that, and if you were to actually put your texture on there, that area around the wrist, the chain link texture is going to be huge. It'll be enormous. So this is how you fix it. And you take a look at your UV maps first, but I'll go ahead and texture it so you know that what the difference is between the two. And you'll have a right and a wrong, so you can kind of see how that works. Okay, now that we have it mapped, we're going to come up to multi-res, subdivide till we get, I would say over a million normally, as big as this piece is, you're going to probably want to go as much as you can push just so your texture looks better. So I'm going to go up to 5. It's going to be really grumpy. Okay, that's good. Come up to layer, add a layer. We're going to come over to textures, opacity, photos. Where I have it, you can save it in files too. I'm going to use this Chainmail Texture. Turn off the UV. And if you're in a different one, say you're over here and you can't see anything yet, make sure that you're in Gizmo so you can see that the texture is on your object. Come down, hit opacity again, and this is going to be probably around 7 or 8, probably before it starts looking good. That looks pretty good. Now, what I want you to take a look at, this wrist here looks really good, okay? No issues with it. All the texture looks really good, but look at this other wrist and the size. Now, you can't always control this, and I'll show you at the very end of the video the female that I did and her chest. It does that just because you have a much different flow on the form. So this is going to show you how to fix issues sometimes. You know, it's all about putting those face groups in and playing with your UV maps, and you may have to play with the regular one up here with the UV Atlas or the BFF, and it just depends on which one you prefer. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. So before I paint anything, or before I do anything, we're going to go in and paint this guy. And let's go more of like a, maybe kind of a rich leather color. Kind of down there. That looks good underneath the chainmail. Yeah, we'll go ahead and paint all. Okay, now it doesn't look like the whole thing's painted, but it is. And that's exactly what we want. Now, this is the super cool thing. We're going to go ahead and reproject this, and we're not going to use the high res. We're just going to use the layer from itself. And if you look, you have a very nice texture in there. Looks really nice. Now, you can go a couple different ways with this. We can use like your inflate tool or inflate UVs, and I'll have to do another video showing you some different brushes and things probably. And I'm also have to do another video showing you how to make an actual seamless texture, because there is a little bit of a technique to it. So this comes out perfectly for you. All right, so inflate UVs. Now instead, I'm going to go down to the paint, and you can do this with pretty much any of them, but I'm going to use paint, which seems kind of odd, but we're going to come up to paint, and I'm going to pick the iron for chainmail. Now, here's the trick. We're going to bring this paint down to probably about, if you look right here, to about 25%, 24%. Make sure it's selected. All right, and that looks pretty good. Now what we're going to do is, instead of hit paint all, because if you hit paint all it's going to do is paint it. That's something we want. But if you hit paint all plus triplanar, this is a cool trick, because if you do with the inflate UVs, I can do it, but then I have to do, you know, it gets kind of funky and weird. The way to do this and get an even texture over the entire model is to go through here and hit all triplanar. And you'll look, the entire thing is the exact same texture all the way around. Now we can take it one step further. We can mask this before we do this real quick. So let's go into face group, get rid of that pen, and we're going to go from the, oh, not face group, sorry, select mask. And we're going to have the one that's selected. That's not what I wanted to do. Just trying to change it, but you want this one selected where it has the face groups to shield or masking. And this is the cool tip. This is the reason I did all of those one color. So if we just tap on this one, and sometimes it'll tap and it'll go from texture to this. Make sure that it's dark, like it's masked. And now you have all those masks, and they all mask at the same time. Just a good tip. Okay, now we can go to paint. Go up here and hit paint all plus triplanar. And boom, now you have perfectly sized texture over the entire model, exactly where you wanted it. Now, this is what I was talking about, and that's what you have to look at. If we look at the inspector, it's kind of hard to tell now because the texture is part of the UV map, but you can see how all of your other little circles are all the same size and they get bigger at that wrist because of that little section we left, but the rest of it looks good. I'm going to show you another trick with this. This is kind of a fun tip and how to paint this chainmail or any texture, doesn't matter. So we're going to go into the paintbrush again, and we're going to go to the filter menu. I'm going to come down, and the depth masking is what we're going to do. And this is a cool feature. If you've never used this before, you can paint low, you can paint high. In this instance, it's going to be a little bit different. And you just want to make sure that your mask is clear. Go back into paint again real quick. And you come down, you can change, you have the top area and the bottom area. So if you go all the way down here and you paint something, let's go to paint, and it's metal roughness, so we're good with that. So come up with a little bit bigger paintbrush. You can see that it's going all the way down to the base. Now, if that's not what you want, you can change this. It's so cool because you can change this to where it will just paint at the base, and you have to kind of play with it to find the right spot where it'll only paint the base, where this is still a little bit high. And this, my iPad's having a hard time thinking about this because this texture's so high. So if we go to the bottom area and we just want to paint the top, which is what I want to do, we're going to go up here probably about 20%ish, and you can paint just the chainmail for the most part, even if your masking is gone. So we can go a little bit higher because it's still hitting the bottom a little, and it's just a matter of finding that sweet spot of where the paint will hit where you want it. And it also will make a difference on how big a diameter your brush is, and we can change the fall off. So this fall off is definitely not going to help, right? So if we do this, then it should do a little bit better. It's just a matter of getting the right amount of the height offset. So there we go. So you're right on the money and on the texture. And with this, I'll go down a little bit smaller, a little bit easier. And like I said, you'll still have to play with it a little bit because it's still hitting the underneath a little. But it's a pretty cool thing where you can get just hit it just right. And we can change this a little bit. It can be a little finicky, but it's a nice way to add some texture and paint to something. Like I said, it's just a matter of playing with where you're at with how much texture and paint. And we'll try the fall off. Let me do just flat and see if that works. That's a little better. So there you go. It's just something to play with, and it's a cool technique. All right, now I promised I would show you that other one I had, and we'll save this. Yes. And actually, I want to take the paint off, and we'll save it again. And we'll go into this one, and this is one that I was playing with, just trying to experiment with the chainmail. And you'll see here, like I said, in the chest area that, you know, it's hard not to get the texture. And I was playing around with just doing different texture sizes because that's something else you can do. You can see here where I have bigger texture on the body, smaller texture on the arms. But like I said, you know, coming across the chest where the breasts are, it's just hard to get even texture without doing something different. And you know, you'd have to make islands, maybe, I don't know, just to make the texture the same. But then you get the seams. So it's really just kind of depends on what you're looking for. All right, I hope you guys found some useful tips in this video. And there's so many different things you can do with face groups, the UV maps. So have fun with this and enjoy. And in the next video, I will probably show you how to make the actual seamless texture, because you need to make sure that the edges match. So when you do the tiling, that it comes out right. So I'll dive into that in the next video so you guys can make seamless texture. And that goes for any kind of texture. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Have fun sculpting.